Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to our next webcast that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly as part of our Roadmap to Recovery series. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Garry Wilson, who is, of course, the CEO of EasyJet Holidays. So, hello, Garry, how are you?
Hi, Lucy. I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me on. It's nice to see you.
It's great to see you too. And obviously, very keen to talk to you about what you've been doing, I guess, over the last 5 months or so. I mean, I think the last time, Garry, we met and we spoke was at the ABTA convention in October. And of course, we were just about to launch EasyJet Holidays then, and we were, weeks away at that point. And, looking at the sort of dynamics of the industry at that point, we'd just seen the very sad demise of Thomas Cook. But of course, that did leave a bit of an opportunity for you guys, coming into the market as a new player. So, but things have changed a lot since then, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, thinking back, ABTA feels like forever ago, doesn't it? It was only in October. I remember at the time we were all worried about the typhoon, but it really puts it into perspective what we've just gone through. But yeah, as you say, we were, 2-3 weeks away from launch at ABTA. And, we were pretty excited because we were getting into that high season period where we would be properly launching the business to turn of year. And we managed to launch, obviously, in November. And we gave ourselves about kind of 3 weeks between launch and turn of year properly happening to put in quite a lot of tech releases in order that the site would be at this kind of optimal. And all of that went really smoothly. And we went into turn of year, and we were actually quite surprised as well at how well that picked up initially. So clearly, the really sad news about Thomas Cook and the gap that opened in the market, we were able to take a lot of volume over that high season. So we entered kind of January and went through January where the numbers picked up, and we were actually very optimistic for how it was looking. And our first customers were due to arrive in destination, I think, in March. And then by kind of mid to end of February, we started seeing the slowing down, and then we had the sandstorms in the Canary Islands, then followed by the quarantine hotel in Tenerife, and then of course the lockdown. So yeah, it was a short flourish that was very positive at the time, and actually since then, and when the lockdowns then launched, I mean, really our big focus has been about all those processes we designed is actually testing them. And of course, I'm a great believer in testing all your technology and testing your processes before you actually have to use them. But we didn't think for a minute we would have to test all of these brand new processes live, as and when they were happening. So that was an experience in itself as well. But yeah, I mean, we had there was a further complexity that we had thousands of customers in the destinations who were with the new EasyJet Holidays, and then there were some thousands of customers as well who were in with the old model, which was through hotel beds. So of course we had to kind of link the two in order that we could get all of the customers back in time. But we actually managed, we got the customers back, I think, within 3 days, which was great, and given just the amount of flights that we had, and worked quite quickly. And luckily, those processes we put in, I remember talking to you at ABTA, kind of we built the company with as much a technology focus as we can. So a lot of the contacting the customers, changing the booking, getting them new flights and getting them back actually worked really well. And we got them all back within 3 days.
That's brilliant. 3 days is fantastic. And actually, talking about your response, I know you didn't have the volumes of some of your competitors. No. I understand that, but you did have quite a good reputation on the refund process, I believe. You weren't quite hauled over the coals like some people. So how did you manage that?
Well, you know what? I mean, it's interesting because the one thing that we were really, really keen to do was ensure that, whatever experience the customer's having with EasyJet Holidays is going to be a positive one. And we talked very quickly at the beginning of lockdown. So, we have to absolutely ensure that the customer comes out of this with as best an experience or impression of our holiday company as we possibly can. And we took, and obviously, when you look at the tens of millions of passengers that the airline have to deal with versus the tens of thousands that we were dealing with, it wasn't nearly on that scale. So we were able to put in those processes that we had designed very quickly. And we paid all of the, or made all of the refunds within an average of 12 days. So we were really pleased about that. And actually, which I'm sure we'll come to talk about later, the announcement yesterday, we've refined the processes further, and we cancel overnight. So we cancelled the holidays that were due to go today and up to the end of August overnight, and the customers refunded today. So we've had quite a lot of feedback on social media to say, they cancelled my flight. I checked this morning, and the money's back in my account, which is great. And that's what we want the customers to feel on the holiday, that that they can be trusted, that if something goes wrong, we will put it right for them and kind of take that anxiety and that stress away, because it's stressful enough for them, isn't it?
I mean, that's fantastic. And yes, let's come on to quarantine and those things in a second. But just before we move on, obviously you dealt with the refunds well. Did most people ask for a refund, or did you manage to keep quite a few people to get them to rebook?
Yeah, another surprise, because again, as I say, it's very easy, and obviously in businesses I've been in before, you sit and very meticulously track year on year, or track what happened the last time, and of course we didn't have any historic data necessarily to track against, so we were finding a lot of this stuff for the first time. So we managed to, the customers that we offered to rebook and to give credit to, I mean, we've taken about over 60% of those. And at that time they were just really keen to say, I want to go on holiday. I understand it's not going to happen, so I'll just book it later on, either in the year or in the winter or into next year. And we very quickly allowed customers. So there's two things I think that we did well. We allowed customers to rebook right out until the end of summer 21, so they could book right out to October, which was great, because a lot of them said, I'd just rather not go this year and have a bit more certainty for next year. And then the other thing that we did was anyone who had a deposit and hadn't paid the balance, we said to them, with the anxiety you might have here, why don't you turn that deposit into a credit that you can then change your holiday, so you can move that holiday again to October 21. And there was quite a lot of positive feedback from customers on that, because obviously the kind of consumer advice, and it still remains that, pay your whole balance, and then if it's cancelled, you can get it. Now, if someone's paid 60 quid and they've got to pay another 2,000 on the speculation they might get balanced and they get the money back, it's a different away from them.
Yeah, okay. And what was your thinking at the time, Garry? Like, I spoke to a lot of people who were literally saying, we are writing off the summer. This is it. We're not expecting anything. Other people obviously have felt, God, we just want to get it back and try and get up and running. And you clearly have still got holidays running. So what was your thinking, and what for the year, and what have you put back in place?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we sell both city and beach, and they will book at quite different lead times. And being part of EasyJet, I mean, EasyJet obviously has a much shorter lead time in terms of the bookings they would take for the flights than, say, a big traditional tour operator. So we were pretty open-minded about it. But what we didn't want, and the conversations we had, was that we didn't want to be chopping and changing continually as the weeks and the months progressed, and giving customers more and more uncertainty. So we were quite, I suppose, definitive in thinking, when we're going to cancel out, let's cancel out to a date that feels much more certain. I know a lot of people did it, say, a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time, but we took the decision to cancel out at the beginning of August, because we thought that will give customers the opportunity to kind of really consider whether it is they want to go this summer, or whether they want to leave it until a later date. And interestingly, everything got August. August is a long way away, and it's surely going to be passed by then. And we're now in the midst of August, and we're still in the midst of this crisis. So I think that for our customers, it was the right thing to do to cancel out there. Interestingly, now when I look at how the bookings are working, we saw quite a consistent rise in bookings for summer 21. So as things became a bit more normalized, if that's a word, the confidence to book into summer 21 was growing, and every week we were seeing more positive numbers. And then for summer 20, it was very, very late. So people were booking, just 2-3 weeks before departure. What we've seen, I think, since the Spanish advice, is that that's brought the whole market down. So it's quite choppy. So it seems that there's been a bit of a lag in demand, and it's brought the bookings for summer 20 even closer to. So interestingly, we were looking yesterday following the announcement, and we saw a little spike in bookings. So I think customers are waiting to see, well, is where I want to go on the list? If it's not, I'm going to book it now for next week.
Straight away, yeah.
So, but of course, it's not the kind of substantial numbers you'd expect in August. But the consumer behaviour is quite interesting in terms of how they're booking and looking at this summer versus next summer.
And how did the Spain announcement, that really affected, obviously, mainstream tour operators and travel agent, that was a real blow, I think, for the industry. I think people who thought maybe we'll make something out of this summer, but that was a real blow. So how did that affect you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a blow for all of us. Operationally, we were fortunate enough that we didn't start the holidays until the 1st of August, so we didn't actually have anyone traveling or travel at the announcement. So it just meant that we actually shifted to mid-August, and just today, given that the announcements that were made yesterday, were shifted out until the 1st of September. But clearly, Spain for us and Spain for most tour operators is the bread and butter. It's where the majority of the bookings are. So of course it's a blow. It's a huge blow. And initially we saw quite a lot of those bookings redirect into Greece or into Turkey or into the Eastern Med. But I think it's true to say that rather than the focus being on Spain, it was just it heightened the uncertainty that customers are and how they feel about actually booking this year. So I think that uncertainty certainly hasn't helped, even in destinations that are deemed safe to go to. And
so ones where there still is a travel corridor, it still means people have got more, concern, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's unfortunate. And you've heard our position on that. I mean, but we are, we want to work with the government on it. We want the communication to be clear and concise and consistent and timely. I think Spain was hugely unfortunate, given at the time when it came out and everyone was scrambling to tell their customers, and for those who have customers in the destination that were bringing them back and what have you, that was a real test. But we've always said, and we always say, if the science says this is the thing to do, then absolutely it's the thing to do, and we will support that, because the health of the customers is absolutely important. But I think we were baffled by the blanket advice going on the whole of Spain, because we're saying, look, if you look at the Canary Islands, if you look at the Balearics, the infection rates are extraordinarily low in comparison to where the kind of epicenter of this is in Spain, and indeed in comparison to the UK.
Yeah.
And we're still pushing that the government kind of would look at these regional advices and start to do a regional approach like we're doing in the UK, because
I know you are doing that, and I know the industry is calling for that, but they're not listening to us because they've done it again. It's a blanket for France, it's a blanket for Holland and Malta, and as you said earlier, you do city breaks, so that will affect you with a lot of the French destinations you fly to, I guess Amsterdam, etc. Valletta in Malta. So, did you feel and it sounds like you've reacted very quickly, but there's a lot of people still not happy with the amount of time given for this latest announcement.
Absolutely not. And I think that, it just heightens the uncertainty. And I'm reading in the press, that customers are rushing to return to the UK in order that they don't have to quarantine. It's not great for confidence in travelling, and it's not great for making decisions that are going to take place in 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks' time. So I think that, again, we would continually to say, let's sit down, let's ensure the dialogue is open so that we can plan this properly, and we can do it in the least disruptive. It's not going to be undisruptive, but the least disruptive ways to customers, in order that they feel at least that they can, that they're not panicking at the last minute in order to get back or to cancel holidays.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that you've got the Home Office, you've got the Foreign Office, you've got the Health Ministry. You've got all of these departments who have got a huge task at hand. But as this continues, I think that there does need to be a bit more. It just need to feel a little bit more tied up or lined up in order that we can manage this more consistently.
Okay, and so then really we've only got a few weeks left of the summer.
Indeed.
I guess in Greece and Turkey, but what are you now thinking for 2020 summer? And then also, I guess, in terms of how the government are managing things and announcing things, you know, to what extent has that revised your capacity plans for winter and next year? Because I know it's an unknown. We don't know how long this is going to go on for, but I guess they are, and they always have said they're going to be able to take destinations on and off the list when they think that they've got the scientific evidence to support that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that for the rest of the summer, I mean, we've got everything on sale from the 1st of September. So, you know, we will continue to review that on a daily or a weekly basis. And, you know, we do allow the customers to be able to change their holidays up to 28 days before they depart. And if anything is on the list, you know.
And do you think, people have said they think the summer will shift it, you know, obviously schools will go back, but do you think there will be a sort of later, longer summer as we would normally know it?
September's always an okay month. So actually, once you get into October, then it's just all scaling down. And of course, I think it's really at the behest of the destinations and the hotels, because, you know, that they would tend to start to, you know, shut up shop when it goes into October. So, you know, no one wants to go to a destination that everywhere's closed and, you know, none of the hotels are open. Yeah, it's just not a great experience. So I think the focus should be on, you know, can we get September away, and then, you know, the focus then becomes winter. And I think that you know, that's probably the big unknown at the moment, because winter you'd really start to see the shape of a winter typically by September. That's when the bookings really then start to get in. So it'll be interesting to see how winter plays out.
And have you revised capacity for winter or changed any program plan?
We're pretty flexible, because obviously the airline is still flying. And the airlines continue to fly to Portugal and continue to fly to Spain. So you know, as a proportion of the total capacity that the airlines putting in, we're very small. So we can flex that up or flex that down accordingly. I think the winter may be difficult. I mean, certainly for us, we had planned initially at launch that we would look to launch some kind of ski product by this winter, but we've put that on ice, if you forgive the term. And you know, we'll focus on city and beach for this winter, but really it's all about the Canaries. And I think that it really depends what the government does on the Spanish advice, because, you know, Tenerife is clearly the biggest winter destination for most big travel companies. And I think over or above the kind of bookings and how that will look, there really is a conversation to be had about the Canaries and the fact that, you know, summer is their low season. They've been through a whole summer with no volume. Then winter is their high season. There is a chance that they could really struggle through this winter, and then they have to see a whole summer next year, which is a low season, before they get back into the next winter. So you're talking about 18 months where things can be very difficult. And I think that really could change the landscape of the Canaries in terms of the hotels there, the infrastructure there, the facilities there. So I think that anything that we can do, and we're obviously speaking quite a lot with the Canaries government and the Spanish central government about how we can support tourism into the Canaries for the winter. But it's going to be quite tough, I would imagine. But we'll know in September, when we start to see those bookings start to come in, just what winter's going to look like.
And are you getting any feedback or indication from the government about them lifting the advice or putting the Canaries back on the list? I mean, do you think, are you hopeful, or is it literally just clear as mud?
I mean, we speak to them, and I mean, obviously Johan speaks at the highest level, and you know, that dialogue does happen, and it's continual. But I think that there is so much and so many decisions that they're having to make that I think that the kind of blanket decisions with the weeks that go between each decision is how they're handling it at the moment. And you know, I think they do need to think about, and we need to encourage, the industry needs to encourage, that there needs to be some more precision and nuance around it, because it really is going to impact terribly, you know, certain organisations and travel companies, you know, if that doesn't happen. And you know, I think the last few months, we're certainly not out of the woods, and you know, we just need that nuanced approach in order that we can make the most of what we've got left of the year.
Absolutely, well said. And in summer 21, just before we move on from sort of your plans and your capacity, I mean, we've got other people who are saying it's really well booked. I guess lots of people have, you know, used their credits to book next year. So are you I know, again, it's so difficult. I'm asking you when you haven't got a crystal ball, but I mean, are you're with the trends that you're seeing and the demand that you're seeing, are you hopeful that we might have a good 21?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that in any normal year, if you were to ask now about summer 21, it's far too early to speculate.
Yeah.
In February, and we'll give you a view on how summer 21 looks. I think there is a tendency that there's clinging to any glimmer of hope at the moment. And actually, summer 21, has been pretty consistent. The patterns of who are booking, where they're booking to, how long they're booking for, the types of products they're booking, would follow a normal trend. I mean, I think, as you say, within that, there's a huge amount of rebooking, there's a huge amount of people redeeming credit. But certainly, when you look at the shape of the bookings into summer 21, it would suggest there's pent-up demand there. And I think that, as I said, when the announcements came out yesterday and we saw that little spike to the destinations that weren't on the list, it shows customers want to go away and they just want certainty. So I think that customers are thinking, you know what, summer 21, that's going to be much more certain, whether there's going to be a vaccine or whether there's going to be much clearer protocol, then that's where they're pinning their hopes. And I think that, given the capacity reductions that inevitably we're going to see coming out, I mean, summer 21 could be okay, but of course, okay in comparison to what? Because, we've come out of a number of years of very good years, and we've seen good growth, and, we will see kind of X growth into summer 21. And I think everyone's focus will be on absolutely, bolstering their balance sheets and ensuring that liquidity's there, and also having profitable operations, and that will inevitably force down volumes, I think, within the industry.
Well, exactly, and I imagine whatever business plan you had in place for your sort of second summer, as it were, I guess that's had to be rewritten, I imagine.
Yeah, we're working on that at the moment, and what we did look at within our plan when we launched the business, as I say, we were looking potentially to launch ski, we were looking to launch into new European source markets. At the moment, we will focus on the UK, and we'll focus on the product that we have, and really ensuring that we optimise that beach and city ex-UK product that we've got. So of course that then does change the plans that we would have had in terms of some of that growth. But given we're a new business, the really ambitious growth plans that we had, we'll still have growth plans, but of course we'll have to look at those depending on.
You're saying you might launch in other markets, not for next summer. Now that might be something for 2022.
Correct. Yeah. So we'll look at that from 22. At the moment, what we're really focusing on is what does 21 look like in terms of its shape, in terms of the destinations we're going to offer, the kind of volumes we think we're going to be able to sell. And once we've done that, then we'll look out to see, okay, what new products do we bring in, what new markets do we bring in, and how can we refine what we've got in line with what we originally planned.
Well, yeah, and of course all that growth requires resource, and I know obviously EasyJet's been very, open in saying it's having to lose 30% of its workforce. Has that trickled down to EasyJet Holidays as well? If you also had to sort of take some pain there and restructure in terms of the size of your, your actual workforce and etc.
Yeah, I mean, as a board, the first thing we did in EasyJet was, was to discuss, we went into the crisis, with one of the strongest balance sheets in aviation. Yeah. But actually, no balance sheet and no business model is set up, to be able to, counter 6 months, 9 months, 3 months, however it might be, of grounding. So the first thing to do was really just look at how we could preserve cash, really bolster that liquidity position, which we've done with, the government-backed loans and placing, etc. And then look at, the shape of how we think future years are going to look and the types of capacities we would be looking to put in, and therefore what the results would be that we would need from an overhead point of view to do that. And we did that within the holidays as well. So, as I say, it was a 30% that we announced, and the holidays business also had to look at that as well. It was difficult. I mean, we clearly were, as we were in a growth phase, it just meant that, the amount of people we were looking to bring into 21 was revised, was brought down, and then, the team that we had in there, there were some of those that unfortunately we had to let go. And, it's a really, I mean, it was a really difficult thing, I think, for me and for the rest of the team, because, I mean, we've all had to do it, but, you know, when it's no fault of someone's, you know, when they've done absolutely nothing wrong and they're actually performing really well, and you have to let them go is hard enough. But I think with an EasyJet Holidays, what made it even more difficult was that these people left organisations to join us. You know, they were really joined in the vision, and they really, you know, understood and bought into where we wanted to go. And there was a number of people who came from Thomas Cook who thought, gosh, you know, thank goodness I've managed to find a position, and we're doing really well. And for that to hit them so soon after, I think was you know, really cruel and difficult. And you know, we've done what we can in order to ensure that we can minimise that, but inevitably, you know, there's people being badly affected by it. And you know, I just hope that you know, things can get back on track as soon as possible, and you know, these people can be brought back into organisations, because, as I say, you know, they're great performers and
real talent. Absolutely, that's lots of companies have had to say goodbye to. You're absolutely right. And do you think the position the whole business is in now can withstand, say, a second wave, a second grounding, you know, another lockdown? I mean, or you know,
from a holidays point of view, I mean, I think when we launched, we were very clear that we would have a very, very high variable cost within our business. So our ability to scale up and scale down is absolutely there. So if we look at the technology we have, you know, the technology that we've built will be able to scale to a business many times the size of the business that we currently have. But the processes that we've built within that are the same. And then when we look at, you know, the relationship with the airline, obviously, you know, our commercial relationship with the airline is that we have access to the seats, as many or as few as the customers would want from a holidays point of view, and we don't give prepayments and we don't give commitments to hotels. So really we can follow demand as it comes and scale that up or scale that down. So we won't have to force unprofitable capacity into the market.
Yeah.
We will. The one mantra that we have is that any customer that we're going to sell a holiday to needs to be profitable, and that's as true or even more important now than it's ever been, and that will determine the capacity and the size of the business that we operate in. But I think the other thing on that, I mean, it's interesting because one thing I'd commented on following Cook's demise was the really precarious position that some of that business model left hoteliers in, because, you know, you had hoteliers there who had big exclusivities, you know, who only had one partner that they could work with, and, you know, they were left high and dry. And a lot of them, a bit like the staff, were lucky enough to find other contracts. And of course, they're going to be hit by a second time. And I think that, you know, this will change. Absolutely, this has to change their thinking of their business models going forward. And I think, you know, the old model, and you know, I'm critical of that model now, and I was one of the architects of it, so I kind of know it very well. But I think the old model of the hotelier just giving their entire bed stock to one partner to distribute for them, I think will become a thing of the past very quickly. I think they'll take distribution much more into their own control and try to have as wide distribution as they possibly can.
And is that possible? Aren't some hotels just so tied up for so many years with one tour operator that it's going to be hard to unravel that and to, you know, to diversify?
Well, I think you know, I think any hotel who's tied up commercially for a number of years with a tour operator is on a really good win. I would imagine
that's a good thing. Yeah, it's a good thing as well. Yeah.
Moment. So I don't imagine many hoteliers will have the choice. I can only imagine that as and I don't know the discussions going on, but as capacities are looked at within the industry, that has to change the amount of beds that people are committing to or prepaying to. And of course, tour operators are going into next year in order to try to recover the prepayments and fill the hotels that they have, you know, commercial relationships with before anyone else. So of course, it's if there's a 10%, a 20%, or 30% reduction in overall capacity, that won't be equally spread. You know, some will feel that much more severely than others. And I think it's those hoteliers that, you know, that will really be thinking about how they distribute that product.
Well, we've done some reports on, you know, hotels that are tied up with, you know, single tour operators and then aren't getting their payments through. And then that's a problem. So it's tough. It's really tough for them at the moment.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that, you know, I mean, as I say, the great thing is that, you know, from our perspective, because we are a very small proportion of a very large number of seats that go into the destination, hopefully, you know, the hoteliers, you know, are able to you know, any offers that they're loading, any price promotions they're loading, any marketing that they want to do on the site, will allow them to do. And I think that they will probably look at, other organisations or other ways in which they can do that as well. But it's going to be tough. At the end of the day, in order to fill a bed, you need a customer. In order to get a customer, you need a flight seat that brings the customer there. So it all goes to the capacity that's going into the destination.
Of course.
And got to be the focus. And I think, again, just going back to the government conversations, the conversation has to be, how can we ensure that we get as much flying as possible in a profitable way that's supported, by the government.
Yeah, and just before we move on from hotels, because I know when we spoke before, you were going to talk, I think, to some of the properties that were previously in contracts with Thomas Cook, and I know you weren't going out for all of them, but you said you were going to cherry pick some. Now, in this COVID era, have you had to reduce the number of hotels you work with, because you obviously need to be sure that the health and safety protocols are all in place? I guess you've got new guidelines and everyone's got to comply. So what's happened in terms of your sort of contracting and the hotels that you're using?
we've obviously we've worked the last few months in just ensuring that the guidelines that the governments and jurisdictions in which the hotels operate are being met by all of the hotels that we work with, and we're satisfied that that's the case. And where that wasn't the case, then that hotel would have been taken out of the programme. In the very short term, a number of hotels have been taken out because there's just no certainty as to whether they'll open or not. And that's a really important thing. I think that we focused a lot of time on, for a customer to turn up to a city or a beach destination and to see a closed sign, it doesn't instill any confidence. And that's a really important step for us, that we need to make sure that those hotels are open and operate. That took some hotels out. But in terms of the number of hotels we're working with for next year, and we've not reduced those dramatically now, because we don't have any commitments or prepayments. So effectively, we can just create a marketplace on the side. Hotels can open the price, and really they're in control in terms of how much volume potentially they can get, because it'll be determined by the price that they charge.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, conscious of time, and we need to talk about something very important today, Garry, because you are exciting for our readers. You're launching to the trade today, and it's something I've kept asking you. But
I know. And you know what? We're delighted, absolutely thrilled. I think right back at ITT in Croatia, when Johan gave his speech there, he was talking about our intentions to work with the trade, and we just need to work out a way in which we can do that. And we have been working behind the scenes for a number of months to make sure that we've got a structure that we can support the trade, but that isn't maybe in a traditional sense, really built up with a lot of overhead, in order that we can keep the costs down, we can keep the prices down for the customer, but give the trade a product that they can get behind and that they can sell. So yeah, we're absolutely delighted that we have managed to get to that point. We've had discussions with hundreds of and thousands of agents and many independent consultants, etc. And we're launching today with Hayes, with Travel Council, and with Mid Counties, and then through to the beginning of September, we will then look to roll everyone else out. I think we're going to be working with about 3,000 travel agents across the UK. So,
are these agents that have contacted you saying they want to work with you, or have you been?
Yeah, a mixture of two. We've obviously, since we launched, we've kind of kept the dialogue as open as we possibly can, and we've been really open in saying, of course, we would like to work with you. It is on our plan. So if you've got any ideas, let us know, and we can discuss it. And really, it is a mixture of us approaching them approaching us, and coming up with a structure and a deal that works for both. So yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a bit of good news, hopefully, within all the bad news, that there's another product there that the agents can sell.
I think it's fantastic news. It's great. It's obviously a brand that customers know, and so I think agents will want to sell it, I hope, as long as you're paying them a good commission for doing so, I guess.
Well, we've determined that together. And I think that, of course, in the initial conversations, there was, should you go for a parity with a lower commission? Should you go with non-parity with a higher commission? And of course, we had those conversations very openly. I think one of the beauties about being a new company is you can say, well, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, and let's come to some kind of some kind of agreement that can work for both. And I think what was really important to us was that the product and the structure of the product that the agents are selling would be the same as the product and the structure that we're selling. So, you know, the low deposits, you know, the number of days before the balance is due, and the prices, because we're really keen that, you know, with the overhead that we have and the cost base that we have, that we can keep the prices really competitive, and therefore they've got the opportunity to be able to play a bit within that, which is good.
Now you say you need to do it in a way that kept your costs low, so that you could keep costs for customers low. I understand that, but then you mentioned as well, just as an example, that Hayes is one of your first in this soft launch, and then you sort of think of a company like Jet2, which is obviously a competitor of yours, I guess. You know, they put a lot of effort, don't they, into on-the-road sales teams and downloadable posters and marketing material and social media. I mean, everything they're doing for travel agents, and they work very closely with Hayes. So I know when we originally spoke, you said you wouldn't be having a big sales team on the road. It would be done very differently. So how are you going to make sure, you know, a Hayes agent, for example, is thinking, actually, I'd quite like to sell an EasyJet holiday rather than, you know, somebody else that may be giving them more tangible.
Yeah, for the launch, we'll be in, I think, about 1,500 shop windows. You know, we've pulled together quite a lot of marketing POS and quite a lot of marketing assets that the agents can use. I mean, obviously we had the TV advert, you know, which we will adapt, and we will put that on social, where we'll talk about, you know, book your independent travel agent, and we'll use media and some of our focus for the rest of this financial year, just to try to get that message out there. And we've also built a portal, a travel portal that, you know, the agents can obviously use, and there's a small team that we're retaining that they can answer any questions, or they can be the liaison and the contact for the agents. But I think, you know, this launch is looking at, you know, is this working for you? Is it working for us? What's working well? What isn't working well? And I'm not going to close off any opportunities for both parties to be able to grow their business. But it's really important that we just get that feedback from them as to whether or not the model that we have and the design that we've come out with is actually working for them. So, you know, I don't intend that we would have, you know, lots and lots of people on the road, but, you know, wherever we can have a virtual support and a support through the technology and through the team we've got, then we'll absolutely give the agent that. And if that's not enough, then of course we'll sit down and talk to them about what more they might need.
Okay, and just initially, if there's agents watching this, what are your sort of key selling points to encourage them to get behind and backing the sales of EasyJet Holidays? What would you?
I mean, I think for those within the areas that we fly from, and clearly the flexibility and the network that we have is second to none. So you know, we talked about that at launch. You know, the amount of flights that we would have to any destination. You know, we'll have 6 or 10 a week, 6 or 10 a day to Mallorca, as opposed to, you know, 6 a week. So you can actually really have a great bespoke. It can feel a lot more bespoke to the customer in terms of saying, well, I'd like to fly mid-morning and I'd like to come back later in the evening, and you'll be able to do that, which is very difficult with a lot of other operators. And I think just the choice of hotels, because as I say, we've been really. I mean, my background was 20 years in hotel purchasing, so I know the importance of picking the right hotels for the customers and making sure that you've got a product range that really stands up. And, you know, we've really focused on quality from that perspective. So, you know, we've really tried that all of our hotels will score 4 or above in TripAdvisor. You know, have got really great customer feedback, and we've gone and had direct relationships with those hotels and signed direct contracts. So they'll find hotels that the customer will know that will be available through EasyJet Holidays, and it's going to be at a great price, because obviously that cost base that we have and that direct approach to the hotels mean we can keep the prices very low. So actually, I think
you mentioned Parity earlier. Sorry, Gary, I didn't mean to interrupt, but when you mentioned you were talking about Parity, so will agents be able to sell the holiday at the same price as you could find it on your own direct website, or how is that going to work?
No, offering at that. So we've offered a higher commission and a non-parity, but obviously the agent can play with that commission as they choose. So I think that, but I think the customer, you know, I think the value that the agent adds versus the price that they'll be able to sell, I think will help, because I don't necessarily think we will see much of a crossover. I don't think our current customers necessarily would be customers that are using travel agents, and similarly customers that are using travel agents may not be coming to buy EasyJet Holidays. So I think there's a great relationship and synergy we can build there, because I don't think there'll be a great deal of cannibalization across either, and we're quite keen, that we can, offer as much opportunity for the agents to sell as possible.
So you're thinking that these travel agents are going to bring you new customers, so who wouldn't think to go on to EasyJetHolidays.com and buy a holiday?
I would hope so. I would hope they would, because I'd hope that the strength of the price, the strength of the product, the strength of the proposition. I mean, there's 23 kilograms free. Transfers are included in beach destinations. There's £60 deposit. So at every step, I think there's really good USPs that are really useful for the agent to be able to sell those holidays, and it's underpinned by a brand that they will know and really good. So I'm very hopeful about the future of it. Absolutely.
Good. And you mentioned there that the value that a travel agent can add, and I wonder, I know you always plan to work with the trade, but I wonder if your views on that have slightly changed given COVID-19 and the pandemic, because we've seen a lot of people who've had their fingers burned, consumers I mean, who have been hanging on the phone for ages, can't get refunds, all the rest of it, and they've got no one to go and speak to face to face. And there's been a lot of talk that actually this could really, once we get through it, could play into the hands of good agents, because people are going to want to use the services of an expert. So do you think COVID-19 has slightly changed how you view, perhaps the proportion of business that might come through agents? Do you think it will be more important?
I mean, we've not taken a kind of formal plan view on that yet. I mean, clearly, when this happened, and the conversations we were having with agents, probably became a bit more urgent, and that they were saying, look, we'd really like to be able to bring your product in, to whatever we can sell would be really useful. And of course, you were saying, well, of course, this is the time that we need to look to bring some of that plans in. And I think that, the plan was, should we wait until the turn of year? And we said, what, let's go at the pace in which we can have the product that's ready, that's able to be supported, and that we have time to train in and give the webinars and answer all of the questions in time for launch. And we've really been doing that the last couple of months. So, I don't think the plans necessarily changed, because we were at a point where we were nigh on ready by kind of March, April, that we were putting the finishing touches to. I mean, what it's certainly done is focus all of us on actually getting that out and getting it launched. So yeah.
Okay, and presumably you don't have or maybe you do. Do you have an idea of what proportion of your sales will come through the trade, or are you just going to see how it?
No, we've got no idea. We've got no idea, and again, I was very keen that what I don't want to do is I don't want to load in expectation of sales, which then loads in costs, which then loads in having to scale back if it doesn't work. I would much rather see how this grows organically, take a view, and then say, okay, that's the kind of volumes that we're able to do through the trade. With those volumes, is our structures, is our processes, is the support that we're giving sufficient enough in order that we can continue to scale that? And I think that's probably the sensible thing to do at the moment, as opposed to going with really big bullish plans and then have to kind of pull back and cause you more disappointment.
Yeah, well, you said you hope it's a good news story. I think it's lovely to be reporting on good news, and I hope it goes really well for you, your launch initially through those 3 chains, but also as you widen that out to other agents, I'm sure they'll be delighted. And Garry, thank you so much for taking the time to talk us through. I'm sure it's been very, very tough, as it has been for everyone the last 5 months, but we wish you all the best. We hope it goes really well for you.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you. Take care.
All right, you too. Thanks, Garry.
Thanks, Lucy.